Thank you, Cindy, for those updates. Great to have you with us as always. Right now, we're going to welcome our next live guest. We've got Paula Heiss, who is the Group Vice President over at Kenco with us here. Paula, thank you for joining us today on this Tuesday.
Good morning. I'm so happy to be here.
Great to have you, Paula. Let's talk about warehousing and inventory management in 2022. A very simple subject, but interesting none the least, right? I mean, it's just getting easier and easier, isn't it?
You know, it's funny. My colleagues and I have been talking that, you know, I firmly believe in the next 10 years, colleges will be teaching classes about what we've all been through in the last couple of years. It's a good time to be in logistics, and it's an interesting time. I'll just put it that way.
Right, compressed advancement to say the least, right?
Yes, for sure.
So let's talk about that in the scope of warehousing right now, right? We've seen a lot of folks have to shift their warehousing and inventory strategies over the last 2 years. And now that we're coming out of this COVID accelerated economy, COVID accelerated buying strategy, a lot of those shifts that were made are now coming full circle and saying, you know what, we don't need these anymore. Let's talk about the lean strategy versus now the just in time, just in case versus now companies are having way too much inventory on their hands.
Yeah, it's a strange dichotomy, and we're seeing with our customers, we're seeing both. I kind of call it the haves and the have-nots. So a lot of manufacturers are overflowing with inventory. They perhaps overproduced during the pandemic. And I think it's interesting, you know, where demand forecasting may be a bit of a lost art now, because for so many manufacturers during the pandemic, they could sell whatever they made based on the product. And in my industry, consumer packaged goods, that was true of a lot of our customers. You know, whatever they made, they could sell. So forecasting customer demand was less important during that pandemic period, and I think it's a skill that a lot of manufacturers are having to relearn. But on the one hand, you have the haves, which are overflowing with inventory, and that creates its own problems. And then you have the have-nots. You have customers who are struggling to find raw ingredients or struggling to find packaging, and so it's just a constant struggle to get the right SKUs in the hands of the retailers at the right time. So it's just a strange dichotomy where you've got you know, certain people overflowing with inventory and others who just can't seem to produce enough.
Yeah, so Paula, that's a really interesting point. And one of the other things, you know, Kaylee mentioned just in time and just in case, right? And just in time now means in 2 hours it needs to be, within 2 hours it needs to be at my doorstep type of management. And in a time when supply chains are very highly unpredictable, and warehousing space is obviously at a premium. How are we managing this, and what are some of those tips maybe that companies need to know of to be able to manage this type of thing?
Yeah, so I think first of all, companies just need to have an inventory strategy. So the pendulum, I think, swings from one extreme to the other, and you know, it's hard to find that happy medium. But first and foremost, just have an inventory strategy. Is your strategy just in time, or is your strategy just in case? If it's just in case, which several of our customers are moving kind of away from just in time and more to just in case, they're accumulating some safety stock so that they don't find themselves in these serious shortage situations right now. So I'd say first and foremost, have a strategy. Secondly, you mentioned real estate, and you're right. Real estate is an absolute premium right now, and the market just can't seem to produce enough square footage to meet the demand. So getting creative. If you're one of the haves, where you have too much inventory, use your business connections, use your third-party logistics providers to try and marry up with the have-not. Because more than likely, there are customers who are willing to sublease space right now for shorter term periods than, say, a real estate developer might be willing. And so it's using those connections to balance the inventory. If you have too much, then you're not utilizing your warehouse space appropriately. So look for some short-term subleases to help out those who have too much and they're looking for short-term overflow space because they know eventually this inventory is going to get sold. It's going to move to the right place. It's not going to take years. It's just going to take months.
Paula, I want to get your thoughts on the value of leveraging predictive analytics and using AI for data assimilation in times like this, especially around the consumer goods space, when you've got a lot of consumers who are changing their buying habits, maybe altering to buy store brand instead of name brand, or maybe altering to kind of just shift what they're purchasing altogether, changing what they're buying to accommodate for inflationary times. How can companies now leverage data prediction, data analytics to stay ahead of those changes or stay current with those changes and then adjust inventories accordingly?
So I'm glad you bring that up because I've mentioned earlier that today it's just a good time to be in logistics, and it is because the technology is just amazing. So a couple of things. You mentioned specifically data analytics, and I know at Kenco we are using a lot of predictive analytics to work with our customers to say, based on X number of years of history that we have, or in some cases months, but based on history, we can now predict the future. So when these specific conditions exist, as they have in the past, this was the outcome. And so really being able to use those predictive analytics, leveraging your historical data to predict what may happen in the future is really important to being able to really put some guardrails around that inventory strategy that we talked about earlier. Part of it's not really analytics, but another, I think, important thing that should be part of an inventory strategy is just data-backed inventory optimization. How much inventory should you have? Where in the United States should it be? How many locations, should you have? And just finding someone who can provide that analytics for you based on where the product is coming from and where the product is going. Those types of inventory optimizations can help streamline the inventory strategy as well.
It's excellent stuff, Paula. I wish we could do a do-over and just restart the clock because I have so many more questions I want to ask you. It's such an interesting space and one that's really coming to light, and there's so many different strategies from AI and robotics and labor. Where do people get a hold of someone at Kenco to really learn more about this?
Go to kencogroup.com, our website. And just follow the website. You'll be able to click on a button, fill out a form, and get in touch with an associate that can point in the right direction. Like I said, it's an exciting time in logistics, and Kenco's doing a lot of exciting things with inventory optimizations, with data analytics, labor efficiencies, and I could talk about this all day long.
Excellent
awesome, Paula. Well, thank you for joining us. Great to have you guys from Kenco as always. We'll talk to you soon. Right now, we're going to take our next quick break, and then we'll be back with another look at weather in just a few minutes.